Welcome back to the Imperator Rome campaign Abridged, where previously we invaded Egypt a couple more times. We essentially defeated them and took the rest of their territory, so we're now a pretty decent power. We have a superpower's territory plus our old stuff as well. We're not quite done though, because there were a few patches controlled by minor factions in our area. I wasn't really bothered about them, but to complete a mission I need to take their territory. So we're going to do it. It's going to be trivially easy because of course they can't raise any number to stop us, they also can't surrender, so annoyingly we have to go through the process of killing them. Here are the missions I'm trying to do. We need to have certain regions. We'll need to also colonize some of the empty tiles to be allowed to complete these missions as well, which is inconvenient. There's also one other complexity to consider. This green tile here is owned by this green faction from Anatolia somehow. That means when we start a war, we're going to be at war up there at the same time, and we'll need to invade them to get some good war score. I've already got loads of ships, so we can put something together to deal with that. Before then, just some easy marches as we stomp these other factions. First, these purple guys. We annihilate them without really even paying any attention to it. And that's that. 2 more regions taken. We're going to do, for the first time here, the check important families thing. To not just kill all of their nobility. I'm finally following the advice somebody gave me. You can look at the local nobles. Some of them might have high stats. You can keep them around and even make them the governor of the area, which increases the happiness of the population, I believe. So I'll do that from now on. I just wasn't bothering to before. When it comes to declaring war on the green guys, they've got one ally, but it's just a 1 region tile up there in Anatolia. Need to be careful to make the war about Arabia rather than about Anatolian territories, so it's easier to get war score by conquering the war goal region, and we'll pull in our ally Cyrenaica just for no reason. They're not really going to help. Well, at least this one tile here is going to be easy. We've stacked up with 30,000 troops to take it. That should just about do it. I've also got some mercenaries ready to make a naval invasion of their Anatolian territories. My ships have gone off somewhere else. They were waiting, so I had to come and pull them back up, but then we'll be able to make that invasion. It was supposed to be simultaneous. While we're waiting for that, we can also attack another minor faction, the Nabateans. They had a few troops, unlike the purple guys, but they just sent them off to attack some of my territory by the looks of things, and while they were away, we took all of their territory. Now here come the first ships, arriving up here in Greenland. My plan was to start with some expendable mercenaries for this invasion, just in case there was loads of stuff up here. I don't know how much population or something there is. Wasn't expecting too much, but I thought let's have the mercenaries go in. If they die, doesn't really matter, and if they don't die, well fine, we can send in more things later to speed up the conquest. Here's a nice battle with the Nabateans. We ended up facing them off defensively while also taking all of their stuff offensively. That's a pretty decisive win in the war, so we'll have all of their stuff, thank you very much. That's finally enough for us to complete one of the missions as well, which is handy. We need to do all of them though to get out of this mission menu without losing stability. We totally could escape and see if there are more interesting missions available. I just thought I might as well actually do this Arabia mission since I've had it ongoing for most of the campaign at this stage. There's a quick look at our tech tree. I've been trying to go down the sieging tech route to have faster sieges because, well, it's not obvious in an abridged campaign. They take a very long time, and there is the risk of running out of supplies and stuff as well with sieges, so I'd rather take territory a bit faster and focus more on not getting killed in battle. That was my vague thought, although we're going to get killed in battle more for not focusing on infantry technologies, of course. Here's a nice distraction preventing me from seeing our decisive battle in Greenland, but there it is behind it. That granary raided text adventure event happens constantly. It's very annoying, and at this stage I just immediately click on the first option to make it go away. Here is the end of the war. We took all their territory eventually. The priority is to take that one spot down there, but we might as well have this stuff up here, I suppose. We're going to get ourselves a nice foothold in Anatolia with this. It could complicate matters politically because we'll border more people and it's split by sea, so it's going to be hard for us to reinforce that location, or at least more micro-intensive to do that. However, on the other hand, bordering more people means there are more blobs we can potentially target without having to just declare war on the Seleucid Empire, which would be rather difficult. So this is pretty handy in the end actually. We can attack the Antagonids next door, and there are various city-states in this area as well. So we'll start throwing down some casus belli justifications and wait for our aggressive expansion to go away again before the next wave of conquering stuff. Here's a semi-pointless shot of me looking at the mission screen and being confused as to why we can't finish this mission. As mentioned, it's because we have these uncolonized regions. So while there's no one to conquer it from, we still haven't done the conquest objectives. They'll be completed one day, probably. Now we're going to do another naval conquest, because I thought since we've taken that Anatolian territory, we might as well also take Cyprus, because it is sort of on the way. It's not like you need a supply line or a logistical base there or something. We just might as well. They're not allied to anyone, so we can, and that's the point of the game, I suppose. So let's do it right now. I'm going to send in this massive stack of like 30,000 mercenaries to just do their thing. Surprisingly, they had quite a few troops, like 13,000, which I didn't expect for an island without that many tiles on it. I was expecting like 2,000 to 3,000. Well, who knows why that is. There is a battle, and it looks like we're going to win with our twice as large number. It is though a case where we won the battle, but we did not win the war, because I wasn't able to do an occupation of the nearby fort before I ran out of supplies, so I had to send those mercenaries back, now half dead due to attrition, and start ferrying other stuff over there instead. Ended up going backwards and forwards with a bunch of stuff. Now we've got more stuff on the island, I can start bringing over levies to occupy more than one place at once and get this thing going. I think once we have some territory occupied, we can gain supplies in that territory. Still not quite sure how supplying works. Well, we can still kill them eventually. Even if we bungle this invasion to the maximum possible extent, we can throw so many numbers at them, they're not going to be able to do anything. They did fully restore the size of their army, so we ended up with another decisive battle right here. And like any good decisive battle, it's interrupted by something happening back home that we have to pay attention to. I'm getting increasingly annoyed. I've mentioned I've been annoyed at these pop-ups before. It's because they're repeating. It's just the same ones over and over again. And the more I see them, the more bored I get of doing the same thing, especially when it's in the middle of me trying to do something else, as mentioned. I think I'm just like very focused in that regard. I want to do just this war while it's happening and think only about that, and maybe try to remember what's going on with the text adventure another time. Whatever the case, all my ranting aside, we win that war by sheer force of numbers, so we now have Cyprus, which I think is quite neat. I was immediately looking around for my next target. It's going to be the Antigonid Kingdom, because they're just the easiest people to invade at this stage. The only thought I had about that was holding me back was that it would take me up to the border of Rome if I conquered them. And that might cause Rome to invade me, because they do like to invade people. Well, we'll see about that. In the meantime, I noticed a tiny Mauryan invasion is happening here in the Seleucid Empire, which alerted me to this war going on over here. This is the big thing that might eventually decide this campaign. Moria are the #1 faction, at least they're the biggest faction, and if they were to invade up and take the Seleucid Empire, they would definitely be the biggest faction. And because that's like one of the main directions they can go, they might well do that, and they appear to be occupying vast amounts of it right now in the current war. The Seleucids also have a civil war at the same time. This is good news for us, I suppose. If the Seleucids can be weakened, we might be able to do something to them. But before any of that, we've got easier targets to think about. I spent quite a long time getting a load of troops to gather up in Asia up there, and then we'll go for it with the Antagonids. It took ages because I don't have enough ships to ferry big armies very quickly. I could build more, but I just straight up haven't. Here we go then with the invasion. Lots of decently powerful stacks, and we'll see what the enemy have to offer. They are a major faction, or at least the remnants of a major faction, so I thought they might have something special going for them. They actually don't have that many troops. They have about the same amount as Cyprus did, despite having a much bigger and presumably richer domain. Who knows? Well, a decisive battle starts. We've got the number, but it's not really helping. Check out our morale. It's going down really fast in comparison to theirs, so I'm quickly throwing more things into this battle, and we just barely avoid losing it by reinforcing. I think what's going on here is our troops suck. We haven't put many techs into the military discipline line and the general infantry lines. So maybe this former major faction just has good units. Not quite sure what a good unit is in this game, but they have a discipline stat, which I think might roughly define how good they are, and probably affects how quickly their morale goes down. So ours goes down faster than theirs because they're more disciplined, that's what I'm trying to say. With enough number though, we appear to be able to overcome that and win the battle. We see the same thing happen again in the second decisive battle, where we appear to be losing despite having way more number. Well, we probably need to do something about that at some point. For now, the number itself seems to do. While numbers have a quality all of their own, or whatever the quote was, at least we do have loads of siege techs that I took, so we can take their forts quite quickly, and the war actually only lasts about 3 minutes in the game. Normally you spend a very long time waiting for the forts to be captured. We ran them down pretty fast just because all of those percentages start much higher thanks to all of those techs. And here we are after the war. I couldn't fully occupy their territory because they do control some islands that I couldn't be bothered to go after. We don't need to though, because we're not allowed to take all of their territory due to this value of a treaty limitation. We can only take a certain amount. I can just about fit in this annoying treaty clause where some of their islands will be turned over to a new faction. Well, we got most of their stuff in that deal. They're not going to bother us anymore, and we could take the rest at some point if I can be bothered. I suppose I will, because we're running out of decent options at this stage. We do now border the Romans there in the corner, so need to worry about that. I have been improving my relations with them as much as possible to try and have them ignore me. They have plenty of other targets they can go for up in Europe somewhere. We then started going towards a civil war. That civil war was avoided by allowing my steward to be corrupt. Very nice. I've also now put my governor's wages or officer's wages onto the high mode. It's somewhere in the economy screen. You can pay all of your people more to make them less corrupt. I think it means everybody's corruption is constantly dropping over time. So it's not so bad to do things that make them temporarily corrupt, because they'll stop being corrupt later, I think. We have some more civic issues. The governor of Punt, who is always the most annoying person in our kingdom, has zero loyalty, and because he's currently with his troops, he refuses to follow orders. So they're just still there in the war zone, not doing anything. Nice tech there to pop some extra religious conversion. We've got loads of Hellenic religious citizens now who we need to get rid of. I noticed while looking at Greece that Egypt has been defeated by the Romans. That means we can do that thing I mentioned before where we become Egypt. I was going to do this thinking, well, let's just use it since the game gives me a chance to do it. I suppose it's good in some way. But checking it out more closely, I realized this might shoot us in the foot, because it makes our primary culture be the Egyptian one, the primary Egyptian culture. So we'd lose out on the fact that now we have a pretty large Meroitic culture, our current primary. I'm not sure how big of a deal it is to make the switch, but the other proposed advantages of being called Egypt didn't seem that good either. So with all that in mind, I ended up thinking, well, we'll just stay as Kush. We don't need a new Egypt. Kush is the new Egypt, and they're just going to have to like it. Now we're moving into another period of cooling off. I just need to wait for the aggressive expansion to go away. Then we'll expand aggressively a bit more, but we are running out of options. I want to try and avoid a war with Rome if we can, just because I know they're going to have an unlimited amount of number, of high quality as well. I'm somewhat interested in attacking the Seleucid Empire just because they kind of seem weak. They're losing ground to the Mauryan Empire, but they're also going to be pretty strong. They're definitely stronger than us. That doesn't necessarily mean we can't defeat them due to circumstances and such. Might try to come up with something there. We'll have to see. I will join you in part 7 for perhaps some kind of military disaster where I get all of my troops killed.